Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to talk about SEC basketball games on Saturday, February the 12th. We'll go in order of tip-off. Blake, first one, red-hot Arkansas with the longest winning streak in the SEC, now goes to Alabama to face the Tide. Alabama comes off a really good win at Ole Miss, very impressive offensively. Alabama is a 4-point favorite in Tuscaloosa, according to Ken Pom. We don't have lines as we do this on Thursday morning. This one is going to be a dandy, I feel like.
Give me an easier one to start with next time.
Hey, you're the one who said go in order of tip-off, and so I'm going to blame you for this.
Technically, Auburn and Texas A&M start at the same time, so I would have preferred to ease my way into this one. But this is
the excuse making has started already.
Get ready for some fence straddling here, because I'm going to tell you exactly why both teams can win this game. Actually, both are going to win this game. There you go. No, I mean, this is one that's very interesting because, of course, the way Arkansas has been playing, they have been a team that, unlike some of the other SEC teams, they've proven they can win on the road, and they've done it at LSU, they've done it at Ole Miss, just like Alabama did. But I think I find something impressive about that because it's not always the case with some of these teams, like we've mentioned. Alabama finally gets back in the right direction after losing 4 straight road games in the league with that win against Ole Miss. But it's hard to discount how well Alabama played in that game, how well they shot it. Can you expect this team to come out and shoot it that well in this one? I don't think so. Maybe last year's team, again, you could have seen that happen game to game, but this team hasn't been as consistent in that area. I mean, let's use this as an example, right? They go 14 of 37 from 3 against Auburn. They go 3 of 30 from 3 against Kentucky, and then they come back and go 14 of 22 against Ole Miss. So technically, I guess if you're looking at it from that standpoint, they're due for an off night. But they have been, I think their overall percentage has been a little bit deceiving because they have consistently knocked down shots from outside. It's just they take a lot of them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the thing with this team is, for Alabama, this is where they're going to get a lot of their points. And if you kind of compare that to what Arkansas has done, they've been average in that category in terms of defensively what they've done. They've been one of those teams, I think, that because they do have Jalen Williams and they have those guards we talked about with Note and Davis, just their quick hands, they're able to get more steals in those kind of scenarios. So maybe if you're a team like Alabama, it's probably you may have to win this game from 3. And you certainly have to take care of the ball, I think, against Arkansas. On the flip side, to me, there's just something about a team that just refuses to lose right now. And, they just keep finding ways to win. And Arkansas has done that for 9 straight games now. Like, they have just found a way to win some of these games. Like the game against Auburn, they let Auburn come back, and yet they still find a way to win. Even some of the games, like the close game against A&M several weeks ago at home, you didn't play your best, but you find a way to win. I mean, to me, there's something about a team like that. And the third thing I'll say, and that is, we always talk about the hangover effect, right? Of coming off such a huge win. I mean, it's, arguably your biggest win in program history, right? In terms of being able to beat the number 1 team at home, best attendance you've had there, most people in the building, such a huge win, storming the court, all that stuff. I think there's just always a natural letdown, especially if your next game is on the road. And I tend to think we could see that here, but it's just a matter of, if that happens, will Alabama take advantage of it? And I think that's the question in this game. I am going to pick Alabama to win this game. I think that there's just a difference at times. If you take out the Kentucky game, for Alabama, they played really well at home. There's no other way to put it. I know the Missouri game we've talked about, it's a little bit misleading because they didn't play well for a chunk of that. But that was one of those games where they proved that at any given time they can go off, right? And they did that against Ole Miss. It's going to be a much more of a challenge to do that against Arkansas, but I just think this is one where Alabama has proven it time and time again for the most part against these good teams, these teams that are, playing well. I think Auburn and Kentucky, they got wins there, but as we've said, Auburn and Kentucky are just,
Yeah.
I still think are on a different level. And I think Arkansas is getting there, right? Like we could even make the argument that Arkansas may be there at this point, but this is a toss up. There's no other way to put it. I think 4 points, if that's the line, or if it's like 4 or 5 or something, I'm going Arkansas on that. I just think that that's high. I mean, I would expect this to be a.
I would think it's going to be under 4, maybe 2 to 3.
Yeah, and that's what you would expect, right, from a game like this where you have two teams that are at this level. But take your pick. I'll pick Alabama. For Arkansas fans, it's worked out well for you to this point. I picked, Auburn to beat Arkansas, so maybe I'm taking the reverse mojo I used to have for Alabama, or I helped them out and let them win games when I picked against them, to where now I can transfer that to Arkansas and, woo pig. Like that's what we can keep doing here. We can transfer that over and you can get the benefit of that. But I'll take Alabama here, I guess. So
who knew we had this power?
Yeah, it's something, but that's why we have fun with it. It is incredible though. I think back like when I started doing these just for random my own humor 6 years ago. I'm just thinking there was a point where like Alabama, I missed like 7 or 8 in a row, and like this became a thing. Like everyone's like, I'm getting ready to put out my pick. I'm like, all right, let me send out the link here, and I know exactly what Alabama fans are thinking. Blake, do not pick us. Do not pick us to win this game. And so I did sometimes, and they lost, and so I apologize for that. So we'll see. Somebody's going to get the benefit here of this, and we'll find out who it is moving forward. So
you're welcome, Nate Oates.
Oh man.
One thing I did want to bring up: Arkansas on the road. Okay, let's go backwards here because sometimes I think it's about a team's fitness to go into another building and win. Last time out on the road, that was at Georgia. Arkansas won that going away. Time before that, Arkansas wins at Ole Miss by 9. And then the time before that was winning at LSU on January the 15th. That was the first game. That's when LSU's slide started, was Arkansas coming in and winning. And Arkansas had not been playing very well to that. I don't know that you can, given that, put much stock into their other 2 road games where they lost at A&M and at Mississippi State. Those were, again, last week of 2021, first week of 2022, when they were just different. But you try to look at this at all angles, and I do think there's a question of whether Arkansas can sustain this on the road against good teams just because we haven't seen it yet. It doesn't mean that they can't. I just think we don't know yet. Although I suspect they can.
Does this setup not feel somewhat similar to the one we just had with Auburn and Arkansas?
Yeah.
Where you have a team that's streaking, they just keep finding ways to win, but then they have to go on the road and play a quality team, and it's just, it comes down to those couple plays that can make the difference, and that's why.
And that building is going to be fired up and sold out and all those things.
And I think it's not the same. Don't get me wrong, it's not the exact same setup because it's much different, but there are similarities in terms of a team that just is winning and winning and winning. And, it's funny because we even had some Auburn people that were like, we need to lose one. And they weren't saying it in that way, but like, we're going to lose one somewhere and let's just go ahead and get it out of the way maybe now. Like, this is probably our best chance to do that. I don't think Arkansas is going to win out the rest of the way. If they do, congratulations on your number 2 seed. But I just, I think it's one of those things where we've talked about it. This is that gauntlet part of the schedule for Arkansas, and you're coming off this huge emotional victory at home. Now you have to come play an early game on the road against a team that's played really well at home for the most part. I just think it's one of those scenarios where it's, you pick and choose the advantages one way or the other. And had Alabama not played the way they did against Ole Miss, I probably would have went Arkansas here because I would have thought, all right, Alabama still, but I like the response we saw from Alabama in terms of how they played at Ole Miss. But look, that could also be a scenario where it's sometimes a team just gets hot, right? And maybe that's what we look back at this game. If Arkansas wins and Alabama doesn't shoot it well, we just say, well, that was just one of those games where Alabama got hot, and maybe they kind of returned to earth for this one. I don't think they're going to go 14 to 22 from 3 in this one, but we know it's possible. And so that's just that's what you always have in the back of your mind when you're thinking about Alabama. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Alabama. I think that, again, I've said all there is to say about it. This is one of those gut picks. They're the stats, you throw them out the window on some of these. Like, these are just take your pick, who you think is going to win, and I think it's at least a decent enough spot for Alabama here.
At the same tip-off time, which is 11 Central, Texas A&M goes to Auburn. The Tigers 14-point favorites, according to Ken Pom. I think this line, I'm going to guess, is a couple points lower. A&M is just struggling to beat anybody and everybody right now, but as we've noted many times,
they keep it close.
They keep it close. I don't think they're a bad team in terms of talent. They've got a big and Henry Coleman III. I'm not going to say he's the equivalent of the two he's going against, but he is good. They've got some athleticism and quickness and some things. And look, if this game is a little touch and go midway into the second half, I'm not shocked.
No, I wouldn't be either. I think that, again, it's just you see what A&M is, and they are a team that they can't find a way. It's like the flip of what we just talked about with the last game, right? It's a team that you feel like has to lose at some point, but you're also with A&M, you're like, they have to win one of these games eventually, but
not this one.
No, I think this one's a much taller task in terms of trying to – you're needing to really win a game, but unfortunately you're needing to win that at Auburn Arena, and that's going to be a test. So I think that's the issue here for A&M is it's just a team that – look, it's just a bad scenario to need a win going into Auburn, who you would think is going to come out pissed off, to say the least, based off of the Arkansas game. Now, hey, Jasper, right? Like we talked about his importance to this team. I think if he doesn't play, I don't. We're recording this on Thursday morning, so I don't know exactly the specifics on that, but that's still significant for Auburn, as we've said, not having him on the floor. So maybe that comes into play against a Texas A&M team like this that is still a team that has some quality things they can do defensively, especially forcing turnovers. So that is something I think you look at if you're thinking, all right, how does this game stay close? I think that's one of them. Can they force some turnovers and force Auburn to take bad shots, right? Like we've talked about that. That is something that comes into play here, but I'm not ready to go there on picking the grand upset in this one. I think that Auburn will bounce back regain their focus after that loss to Arkansas. And yeah, I don't like this spot for A&M just because they can't find a way to win, and they're playing a team that is probably going to come out, I would think, pretty angry after the Arkansas loss. So
where do you think the line settles on this? I have a number in mind, but I don't want to bias your answer.
Probably I'd say around 12.
Yep. That was exactly the number that I had, was 12.
I think it'll do that because of A&M. I think a lot of people look at A&M and say, well, they have kept it close, right? And I think that is something with them. I mean, they have kept it close, and right now I'm trying to look up what Texas A&M's record is against the spread, but I can't seem to find it right here on my sheet right now. But I would just assume, again, with all these close games they played, I find it very interesting on that. So.
Okay, the next one, this is the only one we talked about ahead of time off podcast, and that's South Carolina going to Georgia.
And boy, that led to quite a discussion, which we're not going to have on this one. But
right.
If you want to talk about
sometimes the off pod is more interesting than the on pod. Yeah,
we went down a rabbit hole here that I did not expect to go down. We touched on quite a bit of that. So maybe at some point we should release some of our unedited videos, because that would have been one that's got some attention based on just But we'll leave that for another day. There's your tease for a future video.
Maybe into March is appropriate for that one. But
yeah.
But I'm glad you mentioned rabbits.
Oh boy.
I'm going to call this the Oreo special, and not after the cookie, but after my dog.
I knew it.
Because every day, Oreo's kind of like Georgia. I let them out the back door.
The dogs.
Yes. And we have rabbits in our yard on occasion. And we've got this deck, and it's latticed in, so rabbits can get into little things, and there's a little opening there that they can get into. And sometimes, I guess, every now and then, one must hang out under our deck, because I will let that dog out. The first thing he does is he sprints down the stairs, and he goes to one end of the deck. and he looks for rabbits, and he doesn't see them, and he goes all the way around to the other end of the deck to check that end, to see if somehow by his just moving, a rabbit will appear. And I think he's not a stupid dog, but he's very much looking forward to catching a rabbit, and it just doesn't. And I'm just like, I roll my eyes every time he goes out the door. I'm like, buddy, you're just setting up yourself for disappointment. But do you know what's happened twice in 22, Blake?
What's happened twice?
There's been a rabbit there, and he chases him out of the yard, and I guess that is his mission, and he's satisfied with it. Georgia keeps showing up. They keep chasing these rabbits. Most days there's no rabbit to be had, but every now and then there's a rabbit to be had, and Georgia keeps putting itself in position to find the rabbit if it's out there, and I think that's your gut on this game.
Yeah,
is that Georgia's going to get the rabbit against Carolina?
I just think it's like, I can't imagine Georgia finishing 1-17. So I'm like, they got to get wins somewhere, right? And to me, there's two left that are probably the only options for them, and that's this one and Ole Miss at home a week from Saturday. So I think you play the odds here again. You feel like they're going to win another game, and they have been playing better. We talked about that, right? Like they have played better, played well against Auburn. I thought they played well down the stretch against Florida.
Yeah.
So I think they can
had a shot.
Here.
Had a shot with the break.
3-point game with what, 2 minutes left. So I think this is just one that, because there are just so many unknowns with South Carolina on a game-to-game basis. Because again, even if we think South Carolina's played better, they've still lost 3 in a row, and they've lost by double digits in all those games. Now I know that was Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Georgia's not on that level, but still, South Carolina's beaten Vanderbilt twice, Georgia, and A&M, right? Like that's their 4 wins in SEC play. So to me, it's like they're still on that level. Like they're in that range of those teams. So the first time around, I went back and looked at this, and it's like, what was the difference? What have we been talking about with South Carolina? It's like you need 2 guys, the guys you thought were going to be your main guys coming this season, Keyshawn Bryant and Kuznard. And they played well the first time. And
Bryant played well last time out, too.
Yeah, and he's starting to play better. If those guys play well, South Carolina can win this. They should win this game if those guys play well. But you just haven't had that consistency for them. And that's what I don't know about with this team in particular. And, this is another one. This is going to be ugly. I'd be surprised if it's not, because I looked back to the last game and 56 free throws, 48 fouls. You just think it's like, because of the physicality, I think it will be, a game that you have 2 teams that probably gets the free throw line a bit. But I think Georgia has to win a game somewhere. And I think because they're playing better, this is maybe one of those where they can do that. So I'm gonna take a chance here on Georgia. And as you're gonna see, quite a theme I have going with my picks here as I'm looking down the board, and I'm starting to realize what I'm gonna do in the 7-game slate.
Yeah.
I don't think I should do it, but I'm starting to realize I'm probably going to do it, because it just, the way things set up, and you'll see as we go along here what it's going to be. But I think I'm just going to pick Georgia in this one.
Yeah, that one tips off at 2 Eastern in Athens, and again, that's 3 points according to Ken Pomeroy. Carolina being the favorite there. Okay, not also 4 o'clock Eastern in Lexington. Kentucky, according to Ken Pomeroy, a 13-point favorite over a Florida team that's won, 3 in a row at this point. It has Colin Castleton back, although that shoulder was a little balky last time out. Came out of the game, was obviously in pain, came back. 13 seems maybe a point or 2 high. You might disagree. Kentucky is maybe just that good, and Florida's a good team too. As many issues as we've had with the Gators, a solid resume, maybe not the big wins there that the Gators are going to need, but how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, if we assume Castleton plays his normal amount, I think that's a lot of points.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say, but too, like you just said, maybe I think it's just Kentucky's just that good, and that's why you're setting that expectation going into these games. But too, it's like Kentucky struggled a little bit at home against Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. Overtime game. I'm not saying Kentucky's a bad home team. I mean, right? They're not, but it's just, I think it's still a team that. I mean, they're great. Don't get me wrong. Like again, you can make the case they're the best team, but there are times where sometimes I think Kentucky just gets through those games. You know what I mean? Like we talked about that. Like sometimes you just have to like grind your way through some of these games, like they did against South Carolina. The Vanderbilt one, as we mentioned, Mississippi State was another example of that. That's different because injury situation and such. But so I mean, I tend to think Florida can make this interesting if Castleton plays his normal amount, but it's going to go back to what you talked about when we mentioned Florida and their win over Georgia. I guess the guard play. I mean, if Florida's guards don't step up in a game like this, they're going to get blown out. Like because you got to be able to match what you're getting from all those guys on the other side, and I just think that's going to be a challenge. And look, too, it's like Castleton could be I don't say canceled out, but I mean you got Oscar Sheboy on the other side, so it's sort of how does that limit what Castleton's effectiveness is going to be as well? So
Mm-hmm.
I can see why this number is where it is because it's just Kentucky is playing to the point to where you just realize this team has hit that next level now, and there's really no slowing them down. And I mean, if you look at Florida, and that's something I was trying to look at here, I'm thinking this is a team that lost to Ole Miss by 16, and but played decent against Tennessee on the road. They struggled against Missouri, but they found a way to win that one. Didn't play great against South Carolina. So, yeah, for me, it's hard to pick the number here with this one because
Yeah.
I look at these two teams and I'm thinking you have to assume what you're going to get, I guess, from both. But I mean, certainly I'm picking Kentucky to win. I tend to think that point number is a little high, but I think a lot of that's dependent on is Colin Castleton 100%, and if he's not, I mean,
Yeah, and I
do
worry about that after seeing the way
yeah,
that went down the other night. He just and the thing that happened, it wasn't even I couldn't even really tell what happened. He's battling for a rebound under the bucket. I don't even know if there was much contact. In fact, I think the player that he was going up with was on his other side. In fact, he was. It was his left shoulder that's hurt, and the guy he was battling was on this side. It just looked like just the simple movement of trying to grab a rebound was enough to aggravate it. And to me, that's not great.
yeah. I'm trying to look this up because again,
Although
we're recording this.
he's played well when he's played lately. It you look at it and it doesn't seem like that's hurting him. But like here's the thing, okay? If I'm Mike White and we're down 15 points with 5-6 minutes to play and it doesn't feel like we've got a shot, I'm putting him on the bench at that point.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, and that's the thing is even if he is at full strength, you're staring at Oscar Sheboy on the other side. So
Right.
I think that's where I would say I think Kentucky probably wins this game by 12 or at least 12. So if that number goes down, then I'm probably thinking, all right, maybe there's some value there on Kentucky, but like I don't know if I want to go to like 14 or 15 or something. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of high. But
That's a
again,
lot against anybody. That's a lot against
right.
Georgia.
And we are talking about a projected NCAA tournament team right
Well,
now.
maybe not
They're right
against
there on
Georgia,
the
but yeah.
well, yeah, but they're right there on the edge, right, with Florida. So yeah, this is where if you look against the spread here, I'm looking this up so we can be a bit more insightful. Kentucky's 11-13 against the spread. Florida's 12-12. So it's like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just it is what it is. So Kentucky I think wins this game by double digits, but I probably wouldn't want to go too high with that. So
Okay, at 6 Eastern in Knoxville, Vanderbilt travels to Tennessee. These two teams have played once. I was in the gym for that one in Nashville when it happened, and that was a tie game with a minute left before Tennessee pulled away. Vandy's really jacked for this game. I don't think anybody on this roster has ever beaten Tennessee. That's been mentioned, I think, a time or two around these parts. Ken Palm's got this as a 13-point game. And of all the numbers that we're looking at, if Ken Palm is a line, that's the one to me that sticks out. Because do I think Tennessee's going to win the game? Yes. Do I think it's going to be close in the last 5 minutes? Yes, I do. Vanderbilt is just so gritty right now. Tennessee, we've talked about the scoring droughts. Again, you've got a team that's motivated, that's playing well. For Vanderbilt, it doesn't really seem to matter whether it's playing home or away. For a while, they played better on the road, and we talked about that. That started to even out a little bit. So I don't know how much venue comes into play for them given their season. To me, I don't know. 8 to 10 seems more like it to me, but you tell me if that's overreacting here.
No, I mean, Vanderbilt's been in a lot of games this season, as we've said. You mentioned the previous game, but I feel like that was kind of the launching point, too, for Tennessee. They had just come off that just drubbing by Kentucky. And then, then they come in and play great against Vanderbilt. But that's kind of where things took off for Tennessee. And I keep saying this because, and it's like, well, they did it against South Carolina, right? But I still don't know if I trust Tennessee yet to the point to where I think they're just going to blow a team out by 20 or anything.
Yeah.
And so I think Vanderbilt will probably look, when you have a guy like Scottie Pippen, we've said this many times, when you have a player of that caliber on the floor, he is good enough to keep them in a game. It's just, are you going to get that help around him, right? And we've talked about that before. And I think that's the big question for me is, you're right. Like, these players are probably jacked up for this one, but are they too jacked up to where, you come out and you overcompensate that? And
let me stop you there. You have a good point because Vanderbilt really has not had a game of significance in a long, long time. It's probably been 5 years, like this late in the season. Yeah, Vanderbilt's beaten some teams, but it's been when they've been last for so long, you have to wonder how seriously people take them. I think they're starting to get people's attention a little bit, and that does make for a different scenario. Look, I still don't think they're going to go into Knoxville and lose by 20. This, to me, seems like a 66-60 Tennessee win type game. But you make a good point there.
I think Vanderbilt will make this interesting. But there is an element of the overcompensating for, in that scenario. And I think that's where things can go off the rails pretty quickly against this particular team, this Tennessee team that's playing the way they are right now, not the way they played a month ago or 2 months ago, but the way they're playing right now. There is that possibility. But I'm with you. I think that's a lot of points against the Vanderbilt team that's actually kept things close, minus that just complete, mess of a game at Florida.
And the one at home against Kentucky too. Was 12 was misleading.
Yes, they were down, almost 30.
But that's also Kentucky. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, I think the most significant the game against LSU, I thought was that turning point for Vanderbilt, where it's like they win that game, then you have to start, I think, feeling a little bit better about where they are, and that's why I think they'll go in at least. I mean, look, this is a team that won at Arkansas. I know Arkansas was different at that point, but still, they won at Arkansas. And so they have proven that they can put things together. So I think that's a lot of points. And so I'm going to take Tennessee to win, but I can't say I could draw you up a path right now for Vanderbilt to win this game, but I can't say I'd be shocked either if it's really close.
Well, the path for Vanderbilt winning,
it's just Tennessee would have to just.
Well,
like, you just
probably. But here it is, okay? It's not turning the ball over a ton like it did in the first time, and it's Pippen getting 32, which he does, 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's going to be a challenge, and I think that I don't think that Rodney Chapman played in that first game, and when he's in there handling the ball, their ball security is, I think, improves a decent amount. So,
and remember what we said about Tennessee; they're still around that top 15 in the country nationally in terms of turnovers forced. They force about 17 a game. That's where this game can go off the rails for Vanderbilt.
Right.
If you come out and turn it over 10 times in the first half and put yourself in that kind of hole, I think digging out of that kind of hole against a team like Tennessee with how they play defense is not going to work. So, first 20 minutes, huge for Vanderbilt in this one. So,
okay. Excuse me. 8 Eastern, 7 Central. Mississippi State goes to LSU. LSU about an 8-point favorite according to Ken Pom, which is, I think, his algorithm is more of a season-long thing rather than a recent thing. You may know more about that than I do. I think if you went on recency, 8 is a lot of points, which is what they've got it at. Although State's not been good on the road. The question to me is, what do you make of LSU? Looked really good last time out. Was that an aberration, or is that what LSU is going to be going forward?
I think the question is, what do you make of Mississippi State? Because I know exactly what I make of Mississippi State now.
To me, it's not. Because I know what to make. I know what my opinion of State is.
Right.
It's not like State has been like just phenomenal one night and awful the next.
I mean,
they
look,
consistently lose games to good
out.
teams and have been worse on the road.
LSU has 2 wins in the last month. They're both against Texas A&M, right? So
yeah.
LSU hasn't beaten anyone not named Texas A&M in a month. So I mean,
but Xavier Pinson's not been well.
Exactly.
He's back. He looked better last time out.
I'm just pointing out, if you have questions about LSU, that's something you can point to and say, all right,
sure.
They're a team that they've only beaten one team in a month. But as we've said in multiple videos now, it's because they didn't have Xavier Pinson on the floor. And now that he's back, they looked much better against A&M because he actually played and he looked like he was at full strength versus what he played, 7 minutes, 15 minutes, those couple games before. And you could tell he was not there yet. So now I think it's a different scenario. I'm picking LSU in this one because I don't trust Mississippi State anymore. I think that trust is out the window. I think LSU will do things defensively. This is one of those games, I think, and they did it against A&M, but I think you can really get back on track against a team like Mississippi State that just at times I think just doesn't value the ball. And I think this is a scenario where LSU wants to get back to where they were before playing defensively. This is a decent opportunity to do that because they didn't do it against Vanderbilt. They didn't play well on that side of the floor. But you started to see them figure some things out at A&M, and I think they can do that here in this one. We've said it, and you have to keep in mind with LSU, they went through that gauntlet the first half of their schedule, and they still had one of their best players out. Now that gauntlet is not necessarily there anymore, and you get that player back. So I think things start to even out a bit more. And this is a big game because LSU needs to move back to 6-6 in the league. I don't even know what else to say. Like, this to me I think this is a great spot for LSU against a team that cannot find ways to beat good teams right now. And I think it sets up really well for the Tigers.
If LSU wins this by 17 or 18, I don't think I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the expectation, but I'm with you. Like, I think that I just don't know where Mississippi State goes from here. I'm just being honest. Like, I don't think they're a bad team, but I just don't think you can, certainly away from home. I mean, what else do we say? Like, they haven't won a true road game this year. So why should I believe that's going to happen against an LSU team that really needs a win to feel like it's back on track completely? And so, yeah, I'm picking LSU.
Okay, Ole Miss traveling to Missouri. That one tips off at 7:30 Central. Missouri is about a 1-point favorite on Ken Pom. Missouri is probably consistently playing better right now than is Ole Miss. We discussed the Deshaun Ruffin injury. He's their freshman guard who's the highest rated recruit that Ole Miss has gotten in some time, I think. He's done for the year. Jarkel Joyner is back, which helps. He had 33 his last time out. But Missouri just grinds it every night and seems to play well no matter the opponent. And with Ole Miss, that's been more hit and miss. Some nights they look pretty good and competitive, and some nights they look awful. And Missouri at home is played. I mean, look, not long ago that they took Auburn to the wire with the shot to win and lost by 1. This just seems like it's in their building game, and because of that, it's hard for me to go a different direction.
Yeah, Missouri took Auburn to the wire, took Florida to the wire, took Vanderbilt to the wire, basically. So I mean, I think it's the only way I'd probably lean towards Ole Miss in this is if you fully buy into the revenge factor. You mentioned Ole Miss looking good, looking bad. They looked bad in that one where they lost by 25 at home to Missouri a couple weeks ago. So if you want to throw the revenge factor in, I think there's something to that. And remember, we did just see Ole Miss go on the road and do what they did against LSU, but that was because of Deshaun Ruffin and him having such a huge start to that game, right? And so without him on the floor, Jarkel Joyner, we saw. I mean, he's good enough to carry them offensively, and that's why we talked about the issues with them all year is not having him consistently on the floor. But I'm with you. I just think Missouri's playing better at home, and this is nothing new. If you've watched any of our videos, we've been talking about this for almost a month now. Like this team has gotten a lot better. May not show in the overall record at the end of the season, but they've gotten better. They play better at home. Meanwhile, you've got a team that just lost one of its best players, has been very hit or miss. So, when you compare those two sides, I think you're going to go with the one that has played better at home. It seems to be in the better spot here, although it should be a close game because I think there is something to the revenge factor and all that. But, yeah, I'm going clean home team sweep for the 7-game slate here. And we know that's not going to happen. So take your pick on which one you think I'm going to be wrong about. I think I would go with Arkansas. But that's the one I would put at the top of that list. But yeah, I think that it's I think Missouri's in a good spot, and maybe it is going to be a clean sweep for the home teams, but I don't think so. But I'm gonna pick it no matter what. So
most certain pick to win outright's got to be Auburn. You think it's Kentucky?
No, I wasn't. I was looking down the schedule. I am. I forget about these things as we go through them. Like I'm thinking, wait a second, who plays who? And we just talked about this for 30 minutes. So it's Auburn. Auburn's the pick on that one. So
okay.
If you want here you go. I'm gonna give you one more.
Okay.
So I've had this one ready, and I just wanted to see if this trend was going to continue. Speaking of Auburn A&M, Texas A&M, the over has hit in their last 6 games. So 6 straight over. So maybe that's something too. Maybe you get that angry Auburn team comes out and puts up 100 here. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's always a possibility with Auburn. So
it seems Auburn's capable of putting up a few points.
Yeah. Do you want to hear? I'm going to guess this, and we haven't. Again, most of the stuff we do, we try to. We're not professional bettors. For anyone who's watching this, we apologize if that is. I don't think we've given that.
We are two guys who watch way more basketball than is healthy for us.
We bring up the spread because we know it helps people, and we understand that that's a lot of people. I don't know what the percentage is, but there are a lot of people who watch this to try to get a better feel if they're going to bet on the game and all that. And we completely understand that. So we try to throw in some of the stuff, but we don't always bring up all the stats because, again, we're covering the league, and we're just giving you our opinion on what we think is going to happen while trying to tie it into a number. But you want to guess who the worst team against the spread is this season in SEC basketball to this point? This is actually, there's 2 teams that are tied with this, but to me, this should be the easiest thing you think of. If there are 2 teams that are tied for the worst against the spread, so remember, the worst your expectation basically goes in the wrong direction based on what you think is going to happen.
Okay, it's got to be Alabama's one.
Yes.
Okay.
The other one should be easy too, just based on performance.
You mean a gap in what's expected and
just technically, yeah. I guess that's probably
my 2 thoughts are, and for totally different reasons. Mississippi State and LSU, probably in that order.
Georgia has the same. Georgia
what?
And Alabama. Yeah. So it's Georgia because remember, like think about it in that term of Georgia to where it's very.
I don't get the bar is on the floor with Georgia. How is this?
Because some of the games they have gotten blown out. Like, and remember too. Think about this. Remember how many games they were favored in non-conference play that they lost. You have to keep that in mind too. Remember, George Mason, East Tennessee State, Gardner-Webb, all those games.
Ugly in November
Wofford,
and December.
Georgia Tech, like all those games. My guess is it was it was so ugly that those kind of. I think that the number's probably been a lot better for them in SEC wise. We'd have to look that up, but that I think is something to consider with Georgia. So that is why that number. Because look here, I've just pulled it up. For their last 5, they have covered. So
right, that's what I remember
exactly, and so that's why like the first part of the season really really got them going in the wrong direction. So again, I know we don't always bring up the betting numbers, but they're fun to kind of throw out there. I don't think it should be a surprise who the team has been that's best against the spread this year. I don't think that should be too surprising. That's Auburn. Auburn 17-7 against the spread this year.
And let me stop. Is that because Vegas didn't realize how good this team was?
Probably, I think at times, yeah. I think that was a big part of it.
Okay.
LSU 15-9 against it, which again I think plays into that. No one I think expected LSU to have the start they had, so that is something too that you keep in mind. And then third is Tennessee at 14-9. So
really,
Kentucky's 11-13 against the spread this year. So they're actually one of the worst actually in the SEC. So that's interesting to think about. But yeah, so there you go. The more you know.
I think with Georgia, it was so ugly early. I just blotted it out of my mind.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Although
yeah,
every time you see that win-loss record, because what are they now? They're 6-18 or something. I look at them like, how are you a 6-18 team? Well, there you go.
You have it.
That's your answer.
Yep.
In the taking care of business portion of the season, they failed pretty miserably. So
yes, there you go.
All right, tell people about our partnership with Action 24/7.
Yes. Action 24/7 description below. Click on that link. Code South14. If you sign up, your first deposit, they will match up to $800. So you can use that. Sign up and use the code South14 with that link in the description.
Final two things. If you subscribe, that really helps us out, and also weigh in with your comments on the comment section of the video. We've had some pretty good ones.
Be kind to others.
Yes, be kind to others. Be gentle with us. We screw it up sometimes, but we mean well. And final thing, you see the shirt I'm wearing? That is not accidental. It's a little hint as to some things that are just around the corner, technology willing. So if you're an SEC baseball fan, you're going to love this space because we are SEC baseball fans too, and look forward to covering that wall-to-wall about the way we do with hoops. Okay, I'm Chris Lee. He's Blake Lovell. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.